Now, chronometric dating. Now, when you look at chronometric dating, it is simply asking you about absolute dating methodology. And what is absolute dating methodology? It enables you to determine the definite time period. I don't need a reference, I don't need a relative material, I don't need a relative artifact, but it is definitely enabling you to determine what is a time period in geological time scale. When I am able to determine this definite time period in geological time scale, automatically that is going to be called as absolute. And I have multiple techniques which are present in absolute dating methods. For example, if I talk about potassium argon method, or I can talk about carbon dating method, right? There are different aspects. Then talk about, once you discuss about those different aspects and different types of absolute dating, then talk about what is the significance and discuss about what is the criticism with respect to this. Discuss about what is the criticism with respect to absolute dating. What is the biggest criticism with absolute dating methods? It is technologically very intensive. It is technologically very intensive, and most of the times absolute dating methods are meant for organic substances. Right, most of them are meant for organic substances, right? That is one major problem that we generally come across in the context of chronometric dating, right? Next, cultural relevance of Kula. Now, when you look at this Kula, I see that Kula exchange is more of a balanced reciprocity, because when I look at reciprocity, redistribution and markets, RRM, which has been given by Sholins and Service, I see there are three kinds of reciprocities which are present. One is generalized reciprocity, one is balanced reciprocity, the other one is negative reciprocity. Now, when you look at balanced reciprocity, some of the dimensions of balanced reciprocity can be with respect to silent trade, gift trade, and it might be barter. And in some times we also see Kula exchange happens to be a testimonial for the balanced reciprocity. One dimension that you will have to discuss about Kula, Kula is a triangulation of three things. One aspect it is talking about the economic dimension. One aspect it is talking about the religious dimension. The other aspect it is talking about the socio-cultural perspective. Because Kula exchange happens to be one of the core features of Tobrian Islanders, where they perform certain magic, where there is an element of magician spells which are seen to be existing. And we also see that majorly it is showing a matrilineal society, and majorly it is showing a division of labor that is seen to be existing present on gender. And sometimes we also observe it is an element of prestation. What is prestation? Prestation is nothing but a form of gift exchange, right? You would have heard about Marcel Mauss. Now, when we look at Marcel Mauss writes a book called The Gift. Now, in the context of when he writes a book called The Gift, he fundamentally talks about prestation as a phenomenon. Prestation is nothing but exchange. And in the context of Kula exchange, what happens? Your Mawali and Solova is seen to be exchanging depending whether it is moving in an anti-clockwise or a clockwise mechanism. So those dimensions have to be discussed in the context of Kula. Then, next, heritability and estimation. Do we have heritability in our syllabus? Undamma? Is it there? Now, what is heritability? How many of you know what is heritability? Heritability. What is heritability? Something related to inheritance, right? Is it physical anthropology or socio-cultural anthropology? It's physical, right? Pakka. And you would have heard about something called as Mendelian characteristic features. Yes, and apart from that you would have heard about something called as qualitative traits and quantitative traits. And in this context, what happens is when you look at any trait of an individual, we see two factors which are prominent in the context of any trait of an individual. One is the composition of genetic, the other is the composition of environment. And heritability is all about what is the proportion of the genetic combination with the total value of the gene plus environment. Now, heritability is categorically talking about what is the proportion with respect to the genetic composition or the genetic contribution. Because in any trait, I see the influence of both of them to be present. And on the basis which is what, on the basis of what is the amount of influence of genetics and what is the amount of influence on environment, I consider that to be what? Whether it is qualitative characteristic feature or whether it is quantitative characteristic feature. Or if I have to say that what is the proportion of genotype contribution to the element of phenotypic trait. Because when I look at phenotype, phenotype is nothing but the expression. And in the context of expression, I need not necessarily have a genetic dimension alone, but it can also be a environmental dimension which is seen. So that aspect has to be written. And most of the times, what is its estimation, my dear? Why are they asking about estimation? How do you estimate heritability? Huh? Right? People thought it was easy, this. But they are simply asking you about twin studies. Twin, co-twin and foster child. Now in twin studies and co-twin studies, what do I do, my dear? In twin studies and co-twin studies, I fundamentally observe what is the element of concordance and what is the element of discordance between the monozygotic twins and dizygotic twins. I see an element of concordance in certain aspects, I see an element of discordance in certain aspects. It is depending upon whether the monozygotic twins are subjected to a change in environment or whether the dizygotic twins are seen to be subjected to an environment. And one classic example that we discuss here is the case study of NASA which talks about the Kelly brothers. Where we see the Kelly brothers, fundamentally talks about Scott Kelly and John Kelly. And when we look at Scott Kelly and John Kelly, one of these Kelly brothers were present in the International Space Station, one more brother was on the Earth. And when they found the difference between these two twins, they were monozygotic twins, that means their genetic composition was very similar. When their genetic composition is very similar, what is fundamentally observed? How is the impact of environment on the individual is observed when you see one individual in space, one individual on Earth. And it was observed, the person who was living in space was aging comparatively slower than the person who was living on the Earth. It was seen that the space as an environment was impacting the telomeric length of the individual. So that is fundamentally showing an element of heritability, and its estimation is nothing but the twin studies and co-twin studies. Right? So that is one aspect which has to be remembered here. Next, authority and forms of political organization. A very simple question again, because when I look at any political organization, it is merely a transition from stateless to state societies, or it is nothing but as-syphilis societies to syphilis societies. This is what is the broad transition that I observe. And apart from that, you majorly see there are two kinds of political organization. One is the band, the other one is the tribe. And under tribe I see one kind of classification to be existing. One is the kinship based, the other one is the non-kinship based. When I look at kinship based, I see there are two kinds of kinship based. One is with respect to the clan, the other one is lineage. That is kinship based. Non-kinship based, I see something called as age based system, club based system, Melanesian big man and Polynesian chiefdom. These are the four different dimensions which are seen to be with respect to non-kinship based. Age set system or club based system or Melanesian big man or Polynesian chiefdom. Now these are the four different dimensions which are supposed to be seen, and you are supposed to discuss about that particular dimension with respect to forms of political organization. Then next, single gene mutation disorder in man. Right? I don't know how many of you are able to interpret this particular question. What are they asking, my dear? Why single gene mutation disorders? Why not multiple gene mutations? Now tell me one example of single gene mutation disorder. You all know that. Nenu raste are idena ani. One example of single gene mutation. Huh? Fetus, no. Sickle cell. In sickle cell, what is happening, my dear? In normal HbA, and we see any change in this HbA, HbS, a recessive disorder, and for them to be expressed HbS, a homozygous condition is seen to be existing. Then again, I can also give an example of Huntington chorea. I can also give an example of alkaptonuria. I can also give an example of cystic fibrosis. All of these are seen to be changing with respect to what? A single gene mutation. I am supposed to discuss about those dimensions because mutation as a concept you would see as part of 1.7. Right? In 1.7 you would categorically see mutation being present. right? You will have Dobzhansky's understanding of mutation. Once you write the Dobzhansky's understanding of mutation, then discuss about what do you understand by single gene mutation and give these examples. And definitely don't forget to talk about the inheritance chart in this particular dimension, right? Don't miss this particular aspect and don't forget to talk about this inheritance dimension, right? So that has to be